So you're doing some 10 pulls on the current banner that came out yesterday, and you get 5-star Arlecchino. Now, what do you get with Arlecchino besides everybody's father? Well, Arlecchino is a polearm wielding pyro user whose entire kit revolves around the concepts of bonds of life. And in this guide, we're going to go over the basics of Arlecchino, how her skill and burst and normal and charged attack works, as well as touching on a little bit of the new artifact set and her weapon. So I have not decided whether or not I'm going to be pulling for Arlecchino. So I am using the trial version of Arlecchino. One, everybody can go look at the stats here. And I think that in recent things and recent trials, the stats that they have on these characters have actually been pretty good and a good kind of benchmark. Max HP 19,400, attack 2,247, which is actually quite higher than a lot of the attack in these trial runs. Typically you don't see a high attack like this, and there's a reason for that. Elemental mastery 105. For the crit split, 77.2 over 120.7, 135 energy recharge, pyro damage, but you also notice all of these resistances. That is part of one of her passives. Her weapon is Crimson Moon's Semblance. It is her signature. We will touch on gets up crit rate. The passive also has everything to do with Bond of Life. This is a very signature weapon for her. I don't see it being good for a lot of other characters. For artifacts, she is running the new set, Fragrant of the Harmonic Whimsy, fragment of Harmonic Whimsy, which again deals a lot with Bond of Life. I don't see this artifact set being very good on other characters as well. I'll make a whole video on that. C0 and the trial talents are going to be 888. Hi, Floofy. So we're first going to look at her normal attacks and her charge attacks. Her normal attacks are going to be standard for her polearm. Notice she's doing a lot of physical damage with them. And she does have the scythe tip whenever she is swinging this. Now, her charge attack does do a kind of moon-shaped swing, which is great. But you notice that once I did the charge attack down here, down below me, there's this little red bar on her health bar, and you see this no heal symbol. That is because of one of her passives. When in combat, she gains a 40% pyro damage bonus, but she can only be healed through her burst. You cannot heal her with any other character. You can only heal her through her burst. So now we're going to look, that was good comedic timing. So now we're going to look at her skill, and her skill is going to do a couple of things. It's going to do an AoE pyro attack, as well as dealing this kind of a mark on them. And what this mark does is that it will do an instance of pyro damage every 5 seconds, 2 times, but it will also start to grant her the bonds of life. So as you can see here, every 5 seconds, it will deal an instance of pyro damage up to 2 times. It will be considered elemental skill damage. When she uses her charge attack or her burst, she will clear and absorb the blood debt, which is the application. That's what that red X on the enemies means. And whenever she does it, is going to give her bonds of life, which is that red bar at the bottom. Using her skill again is going to reset the timer for the 2 attacks for giving her the bonds of life. So if the way to clear the bonds of life real quick is going to be to use her burst. Her burst is going to do an instance of AoE pyro damage, as well as you notice now, the red bar is gone, as well as that no heal symbol. But you notice she also was healed. That is because her burst is going to heal her, as well as clear the bonds of life. So what does the bond of life actually do, and how do you use it? Now that we know how to gain bond of life with her skill and clear bond of life with her burst, how do you use it? Also, using her burst resets her skill cooldown, so that way you can then use it again. So this whole time we have been building up bonds of life. We're going to reapply her skill to get a little bit more. When we use a charged attack, we are going to activate it. That activation is going to, as you can see, this red bar, right, infuse her normal attacks with pyro, her normal and charge attacks with pyro. You can see that every time that we do it, the bar is going to tick down. Once it gets below 30% of her max HP, we will lose the pyro infusion. So the way that her kit works is that you have to balance her normal attacks, her skill, and her burst. Because you can't heal her, running a shielder is going to be really, really good, especially somebody like Layla that can allow for some melt reactions. I think it's going to be phenomenal. But we have to make sure that we are balancing the normal attack, charge attack, skill, and burst. We have to use the skill to build up the bond of life, right? We have to apply it. We have to then allow it to tick over. The more enemies we can get it on, the better. We can then use her charge attack to activate the bond of life, giving the pyro infusion. If we are starting to get low on health, we can use her burst, heal up, clearing the bond of life, but because it resets her skill cooldown, we can just reapply the bond of life with her skill, let it charge up again. Something else, if you have the pyro infusion, when you swap her off the field, it does not get rid of it. So this can actually really, really good for getting the pyro infusion, or like using her skill, swirling it with Sucrose or Kazuha, and then activating, and then going to Shincho using his burst and this trial run, then going back to Arlecchino. You still will have the pyro infusion. You still can activate the bond of life that have been building while you've been swapping through your characters to then get the pyro infusion. So in my instance, if I do get Arlecchino, I'm going to run her with Layla, because I can easily just swap to Layla, put up the shield, swap back, and I don't lose any pyro infusion. I can keep the pyro infusion going with Arlecchino. And while you're swapping around doing stuff, the bond of life from her skill is going to be building up. Now, if we have the pyro infusion and we get her skill back, right, like her skill cooldown goes all the way down, then we can reuse it again, building even more bonds of life without ever having to heal or deactivate it, which is going to be very, very good. Because that means that if you are good at dodging, if you're running a shielder and you never have to deactivate the bond of life, you can just do tons and tons and tons of damage with Arlecchino. So quick recap. This has already been several minutes of me trying to explain her kit. Skill applies Mark. Mark over time builds up bond of life. When using her charge attack, you activate bond of life, giving pyro infusion as long as bond of life above 30%. Using burst heals Arlecchino because you can't heal her any other way, and it deactivates bond of life. Reset skill, reapply bond of life. You keep pyro infusion when you swap off. So that is how her entire kit works, with getting the bond of life on the enemy, letting it tick up, letting it accumulate so that way you can then activate it, getting pyro infusion. Okay, so to make sure that we talk about all of her passives, I want to run through them real quick. So one of her passives is that she'll be granted a bond of life worth 130% of her max HP when an opponent to which she herself applied the directive is defeated. 5 seconds after the directive is applied, it will be upgraded to a Blood Debt Due, which when absorbed, it will instead grant Arlecchino a bond of life worth 130%. It cannot exceed the original limit. So what this does is it just means that when you defeat an enemy, you will get bonds of life. So that's what this passive means. It's just another way to get bonds of life. Her second one, Arlecchino gains 1% all elemental and physical resistance for every 100 attack she has in excess of 1,000. Maximum resistance increase she can gain this way for each is 20%. That's what that 12% resistance all the way down the board is for her. And then we talked about the other one. She does get 40% pyro damage bonus and can only be healed through her burst. So right now she is out of combat. Pyro damage is 46.6. There it is. Okay. Pyro damage bonus 86.6. That is the increase in the thing from her buff, from her passive. Now, something else. Oop, that was great timing, just like always. So if whenever you have the bond of life going with the pyro infusion, if you do a charge attack and you hold it down, you get the wing, which allows you to traverse. That is how you get that wing, by the way. I just wanted to add that stuff in to make sure that we talked about it, every single one of her ways of getting bond of life. That was great timing with her in the air. I just wanted to make sure that we threw that in there. I realized afterwards that I didn't talk about some of the passives, so I just wanted to make sure. So now we're going to look at artifact sets. So obviously this new artifact set is going to be very, very good on Arlecchino, but if you need something early game, then you can do like martial artist set. Martial artist set is going to get up your normal and charged attack damage on the 2-piece and the 4-piece, which Arlecchino is going to be using a lot. A lot of her damage is going to be coming from her normal and charged attacks. For the main stats, you're going to be doing attack, pyro damage, and then you're also going to be doing crit rate or crit damage. Now you might be able to get away with doing double attack percent because she scales very well off of attack. And even her healing that comes from her burst is based off the bond of life and her attack. So building a ton of attack is not going to be a bad thing. For weapons, obviously her signature is going to be very, very good. But if you don't have her signature, I was looking at some of the craftable weapons and some of the 3 stars and 4 stars. Deathmatch, the battle pass weapon, looks like it's going to be pretty good because it's going to increase her attack and crit rate. Ballad of the Fjord could also be good because it's going to be increasing her crit rate and elemental mastery for vapes and melts. A 3-star, White Tassel, gets up crit rate, gets up your normal attack damage, which again, she's going to be doing a lot of. For the craftable weapons, there's a couple of options. As you can see, I'm going to say above me or to the side of me. So for the craftable weapons, you do have a couple of options above me that really get into doing like normal attack damage. One of them does get up energy recharge, which she couldn't hurt her. But as far as the craftable weapons, I think that you're going to be better off with like the White Tassel than going for a craftable weapon, except for prototype. I'm going to assume that I'm going to put prototype right here. Prototype can be good for her because it's going to get up the energy recharge and the normal attack damage, which you can just refine and get that higher. I think that out of all the craftable weapons would be her best, but I still think that Deathmatch is going to outclass that, and White Tassel might even outdamage that. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, do be sure to leave it down in the comments. Myself or somebody else, be sure to answer it, and I'll see you in the next one.